Captain Marcus Vaughan stood at the observation deck of the mining vessel Crimson Dawn, watching the red dwarf star cast its dying light across the asteroid field. His crew had been working the outer rim for 3 months, harvesting rare minerals from the forgotten rocks that drifted like ghosts through space. They were the forgotten ones, the miners who worked where no one else dared to venture. The ship's engineer, Tobias Kane, burst through the airlock with excitement burning in his eyes. His usually calm demeanor was shattered, replaced by something Marcus had never seen before. Behind him followed Dr. Nathaniel Cross, the expedition's archaeologist, whose hands trembled as he clutched a datapad. "Captain, you need to see this," Tobias said, his voice barely contained. "We found something in asteroid designation Alpha 7. It's not natural." Marcus turned away from the viewport, his weathered face showing concern. The crew had been jumpy lately, reporting strange dreams and unusual energy readings. Now this. He followed them to the main briefing room, where the rest of the senior staff waited. Dr. Cross activated the holographic display, showing the interior of the asteroid they had been mining. What appeared on screen defied explanation. Deep within, the rock was a chamber, perfectly preserved, containing what looked like ancient human architecture. But that was impossible. Humans had only been in space for 2 centuries, and this structure was clearly millennia old. "The carbon dating is off the charts," Dr. Cross explained, his voice shaking. "This predates known human civilization by tens of thousands of years. But the DNA traces we found match Earth baseline perfectly. The chamber contained murals depicting humans in massive armor, wielding weapons that could shatter planets. They stood triumphant over alien races, their eyes glowing with divine fire. At the center of the chamber sat a pedestal with what appeared to be a crystalline seal, pulsing with faint energy." "Sir," interrupted Lieutenant Zara Maddox, the ship's security chief, "we've been monitoring communications from other mining operations in the sector. 3 ships have gone dark in the past week. The last transmission from the Stellar Hammer was just screaming." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Something was happening, something that connected to whatever they had found in that asteroid. The ancient murals seemed to watch him as if waiting for something. "Doctor, what's your assessment?" Marcus asked. Dr. Cross looked up from his readings, fear and wonder mixing in his expression. "Captain, I believe we've discovered evidence of humanity's true origin. These aren't just ruins, they're a warning, or maybe a promise." The crystalline seal pulsed brighter, and somewhere in the depths of space, other seals began to respond. The awakening had begun, and Marcus Vaughan had no idea that his discovery would reshape the galaxy forever. 3 days after the discovery, the Crimson Dawn was no longer alone in the asteroid field. Ships from across the sector had arrived, drawn by reports of the ancient chamber, but these weren't just curious explorers. They were people who had been experiencing the same strange dreams, the same unexplained urges. Commander Jackson Pierce arrived aboard the heavy cruiser Iron Resolve, bringing with him a dozen other captains who had felt the call. Each ship carried crew members who had begun to change. Their eyes held flecks of gold. Their movements carried new strength, and they spoke of memories that weren't their own. Dr. Cross had been working around the clock, studying the seal and the murals. His research revealed a terrifying truth. Humanity hadn't evolved on Earth. They had been imprisoned there, their true nature locked away by forces that feared what they could become. "The seal isn't just a marker," Dr. Cross explained to the gathered captains in the briefing room. "It's a lock, and something is trying to open it." As if responding to his words, the crystalline structure began to crack. Energy poured from the fissures, washing over everyone in the chamber. The effect was immediate and profound. Captain Vaughan felt his consciousness expand, memories flooding back from ancestors he had never known. He saw vast fleets of human ships, each one the size of a city, moving through space like gods among mortals. He witnessed battles where single human warriors destroyed entire alien armadas with nothing but their will and fury. He remembered being more than human, being something divine and terrible. The transformation wasn't limited to those in the chamber. Across the fleet, crew members began to change. Their bodies grew stronger, their minds sharper, their eyes burning with inner fire. They moved with purpose now, no longer the simple miners and traders they had been. Lieutenant Maddox felt the change most dramatically. Her security training merged with ancient battle knowledge, and she found herself able to predict enemy movements before they happened. When she gripped her plasma rifle, it seemed to respond to her will, becoming more than just a weapon. "Sir," she reported to Captain Vaughn, "we're receiving distress signals from across the sector, but they're not asking for help. They're asking for orders." The captain, now standing taller than before, his presence commanding in ways it had never been, understood. The awakening was spreading. Every human in space was beginning to remember what they truly were. But they weren't alone in their realization. Deep space monitors detected massive alien fleets moving toward human space. The Galactic Council, that governing body of elder races, had been watching. They had been waiting for this moment, the moment when humanity's seals would break. "They're coming to stop us," Commander Pierce said, his voice now carrying harmonics that made the ship's hull vibrate. "They know what we're becoming." Captain Vaughn looked out at the stars, seeing them not as distant lights, but as future conquests. "Then we'd better remember fast." The seal shattered completely, and across the galaxy, humanity began to wake up. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session for the first time in 1,000 years. Representatives from across the galaxy gathered in the massive station orbiting the neutron star Kepler 442, their faces showing the same expression that had haunted their ancestors. Terror of humanity's return, Elder Vex of the Zephyrian Collective, stood before the assembly, his crystalline form pulsing with anxious energy. "The seals are breaking," he announced, his voice carrying across the chamber. "Our ancestors' greatest fear is becoming reality." The council chamber erupted in panicked chatter. The Drakmori delegate, a massive reptilian creature named Warlord, Thane, slammed his clawed fist on the table. "We should have destroyed them completely when we had the chance," he growled. "Imprisonment was never going to be permanent." But it was too late for regrets. Across human space, the transformation was accelerating. Captain Vaughn's fleet had grown to over 50 ships, each one crewed by humans who were remembering their divine heritage. They moved through space with a confidence that terrified alien observers. Dr. Cross had become something more than a simple archaeologist. The ancient knowledge flowed through him like a river, and he understood now why humanity had been feared. They weren't just another species, they were the apex predators of the universe, beings created for war and conquest on a cosmic scale. "We need to reach Earth," he told Captain Vaughn as they stood in the transformed command center of the Crimson Dawn. The ship itself had begun to change, its hull taking on organic properties that responded to its crew's will. "The primary seals are there. If we can break those, every human in the galaxy will awaken." The journey to Earth took them through Zephyrian space, where they encountered their first real resistance. A battle fleet of crystalline ships tried to intercept them, weapons blazing with energy that could vaporize planets. But the humans were no longer the weak creatures they had been. Lieutenant Maddox, now elevated to admiral through pure instinct and ancient right, coordinated the defense with tactical brilliance that seemed impossible. The human ships moved like dancers, avoiding enemy fire while delivering devastating counterattacks. When Captain Vaughn spoke, his voice carried across space itself, striking fear into alien hearts. You made us forget, he said, his words reaching. Every enemy ship. You buried our glory, chained our power, made us small and weak and grateful for scraps. But we remember now. The battle was over in minutes. The Zephyrian fleet scattered, their ships fleeing back to their core worlds with tales of humanity's return. But the victory came with a cost. The humans could feel something else awakening, something darker and more violent than even their ancestors had been. Commander Pierce, his body now crackling with energy that made the air around him shimmer, approached the captain. Sir, we're receiving reports from across human space. The changes are accelerating, but some people aren't handling it well. They're becoming something else, something more violent. Vaughn nodded grimly. This was the price of awakening. Not all humans would return as the noble warriors they had once been. Some would become the monsters their enemies had always claimed they were. Then we'd better reach Earth quickly, he said, before we lose ourselves completely. The fleet turned towards humanity's forgotten home, carrying with them the power to reshape the galaxy. Earth hung in space like a blue-green jewel, seemingly peaceful and unaware of the cosmic forces converging upon it. But Captain Vaughn's enhanced senses could feel the power hidden beneath its surface, ancient seals that had kept humanity's true. Nature locked away for millennia. The Galactic Council had arrived first. Their combined fleet stretched across the solar system like a metal plague, thousands of ships from dozens of species united in their fear of humanity's return. They had come to make their final stand at the birthplace of their greatest threat. Admiral Maddox stood beside Captain Vaughn on the bridge of the Crimson Dawn, her eyes now burning with golden fire. The transformation had completed itself during their journey, and she was no longer entirely human. None of them were. Enemy fleet composition includes Drakmori dreadnoughts, Zephyrian crystal ships, and Nexus bio-vessels, she reported, her voice carrying harmonics that made reality itself tremble. Total count, 4,736 combat vessels. Dr. Cross, now serving as the fleet's oracle and keeper of ancient knowledge, consulted the patterns flowing through his enhanced consciousness. The primary seals are located at specific points around the globe, he said. Breaking them will require simultaneous strikes, and the enemy knows this. They'll try to stop us at all costs. The human fleet had grown during their journey as more ships joined them, their crews undergoing the same transformation, but they were still outnumbered nearly 100 to 1. In the old days, when humanity was weak and mortal, such odds would have been impossible, but they were no longer. Weak. Captain Vaughn raised his hand, and across the fleet, weapon systems that had evolved beyond mere technology powered up. The ships themselves had become extensions of their crew's will, their hulls shifting and adapting like living things. Open. A channel to the Council fleet, Vaughn commanded. Elder Vex's crystalline form appeared on the main screen, his usual calm shattered by visible terror. Marcus Vaughn, he said, you don't understand what you're unleashing. Your species was contained. For good reason. You are engines of destruction incapable of coexistence. You're right, Vaughn replied, his voice now carrying the weight of ancient authority. We are destruction, but only to those who would cage us. The battle began without warning. The Council fleet opened fire simultaneously, weapons that could shatter moons converging on the human vessels. But the humans were no longer bound by physical laws. Their ships phased through attacks, materialized behind enemy lines, and struck with weapons that seemed to bend reality itself. Commander Pierce, now commanding a vessel that looked more like a living creature than a ship, tore through a squadron of Drakmori dreadnoughts with casual ease. Where his weapons struck, enemy ships didn't just explode, they ceased to exist, erased from reality by humanity's awakened power. The transformation was spreading to Earth itself. As the battle raged, above, humans on the surface began to change. Cities shifted as their inhabitants remembered their true nature, and the planet's hidden defenses, ancient weapons buried beneath the crust, began to activate. Dr. Cross felt the seals weakening. "Captain, the primary seal is in the Pacific Ocean, 30 kilometers down. If we can reach it." A massive explosion rocked the Crimson Dawn as a concentrated barrage from the Council fleet found its mark. But instead of being destroyed, the ship absorbed the energy, its hull glowing brighter as it fed on the attack. "All ships, converge on Earth," Vaughn commanded. "It's time to come home." The final phase of humanity's awakening was about to begin. The ocean floor trembled as Captain Vaughn's strike team descended toward the primary seal. The water around them glowed with ancient energy, and massive structures rose from the deep, remnants of humanity's original civilization hidden beneath. Miles of water and sediment. Dr. Cross moved with purpose now, his transformation complete. He was no longer just a man, but a living repository of human history, able to read the seals and understand their true meaning. "The seal isn't just a lock," he said, as they approached the crystalline structure. "It's a test. Only when humanity was ready to reclaim its birthright would it be possible to break." Above them, the battle raged with increasing intensity. Admiral Maddox had taken command of the orbital defense, her tactical genius now enhanced by memories of countless ancient battles. The human fleet moved like a single organism, each ship responding to the other's needs without communication. The Council forces were beginning to break. Their weapons, designed to fight conventional enemies, were useless against humans who could exist partially outside normal space-time. Commander Pierce's vessel had grown to the size of a small moon, its biomechanical structure absorbing destroyed enemy ships and adding their mass to its own. "Sir," came a transmission from Lieutenant Torres, another officer whose transformation had granted her the ability to communicate across vast distances telepathically. "The seals on the other continents are responding. Humans worldwide are beginning to awaken en masse." Captain Vaughn placed his hand on the primary seal and immediately felt the weight of millions of years of suppressed human potential. The seal didn't resist. It welcomed his touch, recognizing him as what he had always been destined to become. The crystal structure cracked, then shattered, releasing a wave of energy that swept across the galaxy in seconds. Every human being, from the core worlds to the outer rim, felt the change simultaneously. Factory workers became warrior poets, scientists became reality shapers, and children began to dream of stars they had never seen, but somehow remembered conquering. On Earth, the changes were most dramatic. Cities rebuilt themselves according to ancient patterns, their architecture flowing like living things. The planet's surface cracked open in places, revealing massive structures that had been buried since humanity's exile. Temples, fortresses, and launch platforms for ships that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Elder Vex, watching from his flagship as his fleet disintegrated around him, sent one final message to the human forces. "You have doomed the galaxy. Your species will consume everything, leave nothing but ash and silence in your wake." Captain Vaughn, now standing on the bridge of a ship that had become something between vessel and living god, responded with the voice of awakened humanity. "No, we will forge something new. An empire built not on fear, but on the understanding that some species are meant to rule the stars." The Galactic Council's fleet scattered, their ships fleeing to the far reaches of space to spread word of humanity's return. But it was too late to stop what had been set in motion. Dr. Cross, his consciousness now expanded to encompass the collective memory of the human species, spoke the final words of the awakening. "We are no longer the children who were sent to Earth in chains. We are the inheritors of infinity, the builders of eternity, the rightful masters of all that exists between the stars." The Terran Empire was born in that moment, not through conquest, but through the simple act of humanity remembering what it had always been. And across the galaxy, ancient powers that had slumbered for eons began to stir, recognizing the return of their greatest rivals and most worthy opponents. The age of human ascendancy had begun.